Part 23. Infinite Doomsday Start Draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 221. This is a tungsten alloy armor-piercing projectile with a kinetic energy of more than 7 million joules. Now he can only fire this kind of shell with a tank. If he faces that formation alone, he may not be able to break the opponent's defense even once. Individual anti-tank rocket? No. From the nature of the matter, that kind of defensive aura has limited ability to deal with kinetic energy bullets such as tungsten alloy penetrators. When dealing with metal jets fired by armor-piercing bullets, the defensive power is probably much higher. That kind of defensive aura can even eliminate the penetration of armor-piercing bullets by simulating explosive reactive armor. The only thing that can comfort him is that the opponent's formation cannot be completed by a single person, and it also depends on teammates. The opponent relies on teammates, and he relies on equipment. Everyone is the same, so no one should be afraid of anyone. The opponent's formation is very hard, but Ruger also knows that since he is aiming at Austin, the core of the formation, it is actually equivalent to attacking the hardest part of the formation. If he randomly picked another person to attack, I'm afraid that the formation would even give up that person and throw him out of the formation to ensure the perfection of the formation. If that's the case, even if Luger fired a few more shots in a row, the threat to the opponent's entire formation would be quite limited. What? Wouldn't it be better to kill all the other paladins of the opponent with one shot? In a field battle, it is indeed possible to fight like this. But now Luger is in his own territory with limited depth, so he won't use that method. He can't hit and run, and it would be more passive for Luger to drive a chariot to meet the enemy. When the paladin cult on the opposite side rushed to him, his chariot itself could not survive the close-range attack of so many supermen. But fortunately, he is not alone. Before, he just shouted to his subordinates, "Get ready and wait for his order." But he only fired one shot by himself and hasn't given any orders yet. Seeing that the other side had calmed down after the first shell, he immediately corrected the muzzle and fired the second round. At the same time, he also shouted loudly in the communicator, "Target, the 5 Vanguard Paladins in the front row of the other side, open fire." Vanguard Paladins are the 5 Paladins holding large shields who are walking in the front row of the Paladin order. Although they have never heard of this name, just by looking at the layout of the entire formation, the human guards can understand who Ruger is referring to. So at the same time as the cannon sounded, 10 62mm caliber general-purpose machine guns also fired at the 5 paladins in groups of 2. In the past few days, Ruger has increased the machine guns at the firepower point at the entrance of the shelter from 4 to 10. On the one hand, the human guards are well trained and it is worth him to issue more weapons. On the other hand, after a period of hesitation and observation, he gradually has enough trust in these human guards. Yes, there are spies from others here. Yes, there may be spies hiding deeper that have not been exposed. However, Ruger did not give them more advanced weapons, but just more general machines. The only difference is that when he arranged a dozen human guards to go to the firing point, he also assigned several guards to act as special ammunition managers and replace the machine guns with armor-piercing bullets. This is also a test to see if anyone will take the opportunity to deduct this more powerful ammunition. However, to deduct them from the ammunition belt, not only sufficient skills are required, but also sufficient time and cover. In any case, as long as this person takes action, Ruger will record it. And if these hidden spies intend to cooperate with the Paladin cult to attack Ruger, then sorry, the 4569 level 4 protection tank is not afraid of this armor-piercing bullet. But when they find that they risked their lives to defect and attack Ruger but achieved nothing, what awaits them will be the burst fire of the machine guns on the remote-controlled weapon station secretly arranged by Ruger on the ceiling of the shelter. Ruger may be more suspicious and distrustful of these humans than those Nephilim supremacists. Those people simply didn't think that these ordinary humans were people who could communicate with them on an equal footing. But Ruger directly regarded them all as potential threats. Comparatively, because Ruger didn't despise them, he would make several arrangements to guard against them. It was also because of these arrangements that Ruger would now feel at ease to use their combat power. The caliber tungsten core armor-piercing bullet, with a muzzle kinetic energy of about 3,500 joules, can kill a nightmare-level zombie with 2 shots. But it is based on the premise that both shots hit the vital points of the head. So it is strong, but not too strong. This level of attack power, even if it attacks the defensive aura formation at an average rate of dozens of rounds per second, is difficult to compare with a tank shell. However, they are not fighting alone. Ruger issued the order to fire after he fired the second tungsten alloy rod. Even though Austin was well prepared, experienced, and in high spirits, the result did not change much. After all, 1500 plus meters per second is more than 4 times the speed of sound. No matter how powerful Nephilim was, it was impossible to deal with this shot in advance. In the end, he still had to rely on the defense formation to take it. And to take it, he still had to rely on the defense spirit to consume the kinetic energy of more than 7 million joules bit by bit. Most of the spiritual energy of the entire defensive formation was gathered near Austin to help him unload the force of the tungsten alloy rod, so the spiritual energy in other places would naturally be thinner. The thinner the defensive spiritual energy, the worse the defense and damage reduction effect. So, the tungsten core armor-piercing bullets fired by 10 general-purpose machine guns rushed into the weak defensive spiritual energy one after another, and soon after, one of them finally broke through the defensive formation and hit the paladin's shield. A crisp clang sounded, as if it sounded the death knell of the 5 Knights of the Vanguard. There was a first shot and a second shot. There was a second shot and an nth shot. For a while, the death knell sounded from the initial single sound, becoming more and more urgent and shorter. But after a few breaths, the sound was as dense as a school bell. The sound was nothing to other people, but after Ruger heard it, he almost suffered from PTSD and recalled the time when he was dominated by nightmares. Fortunately, he was only reminded of a long-forgotten memory. The 5 paladins behind the shield, no, excluding the one in the middle who was still standing strong, the other 4 were in a much worse situation. If the shield held by Austin in the middle was an artifact level, at least a legendary level, and a high-level dark gold equipment, then the shields of the other 4 paladins were probably between intermediate bright gold and primary dark gold. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 222. The most widely known standards among players. Gray, white, green, blue, purple, orange, red. If we compare the levels of this set of equipment, Austin's shield is somewhere between orange and red. Others have just purple equipment adapted to their own level. The purple shield is strong, and it can block so many dense 762 armor-piercing bullets. It can at least reach the level 3 protection level of NATO 4569 standard. But even the armored vehicle itself will have its protective power reduced if it is hit by the same piece of armor continuously. The shields of these 4 paladins were almost turned into electric bells. If they had durability attributes, the durability would have dropped from 90% to about 1% in a few seconds. Then, there was a sound like an iron pestle piercing the bottom of a pot, and finally one of the shields was completely penetrated. However, the most vulnerable paladin did not die immediately. Although his shield was completely destroyed, the plate armor on his body was still there. When these guys charged, they even put on helmets that they hardly wore normally, and even dropped their visors. The defensive power of their plate armor is obviously not comparable to that of the large shields in their hands, but if you calculate it, it won't be a problem to support it for a few seconds. And as the entire battle formation deepened, they got closer and closer to Luger. In a few seconds, even Lugger and the human guards at the machine gun fire point would be able to enter the attack range of the long-range professionals behind them. After suppressing the machine gun fire, they could catch up with Lugger and kill him with his men and artillery. At least, that's what the paladins thought. So they still stared at the machine gun fire and gritted their teeth. But will things go as they wish? Lugger's side followed the previous rhythm and hit the third shot through the pole, hitting Austin's shield again. But he still didn't let Sarah's two tanks open fire. Looking at the paladin battle formation getting closer and closer, not only was he not anxious, but the corners of his mouth gradually turned upward. "It's almost done, right?" he muttered, picked up the communicator at hand, and shouted to Taya, the artillery support behind him, "I think it's almost done, Taya, use that one." Taya is still firing grenades at the top of the enemy's battle formation at the rhythm of one grenade every 8 seconds. She is also a hero in weakening the opponent's defensive aura. But when she heard Lugger's words, she was a little confused. What that? Do you want me to change the tank?" Only then did Luge realize that he had told Lao Now Noisy about his previous plan, and Taya didn't know about it. So he hurriedly said, "Do you still remember the special warhead I asked you to make 2 days ago? It's called a PM bullet, and I asked you to use the bright red shell." "That? I remember," Taya suddenly said. "You actually installed that thing in the cannonball on this car." Artillery shells also have warheads. Although there are several common artillery shells in which the warheads themselves are highly overlapped with the warheads, there are also many special ammunitions that require separate consideration of the two concepts. For example, precision-guided artillery shells. "That's right," Lugger said, "let Now Noisy help you find it, and now, fire 6 rounds evenly at the back of those guys." "Good." The most worry-free thing about Taya is that she never loses control at critical moments. Even if you want to drop it, you must hold it in until the critical moment passes. If it were a daily gun test, she would never borrow it from others because of her personality. She would have to figure out how to use the automatic loader control system to find the PM bullet by herself. Even though the so-called other person is actually her own pet, Lao Now Noisy. But now she is in the combat stage, so she won't even try. She will do whatever Lugger says. "Let Lao Naokeo help?" "No problem at all." So soon, under the control of Lao Naokeo, the automatic loader marked the positions of the 6 PM bombs and set the program to become the place where the next 6 PM bombs would be fired and retrieved. Seeing that the ready icon on the control panel had been lit up, Tia opened the cannon without saying a word and followed Ruger's request, firing 6 special cannonballs at the rear of the Paladin battle formation. This time, I used the fastest speed. In just 10 seconds, 6 shells exploded behind the Paladin. The yellowish-brown dust-like smoke spread out instantly and connected into one, isolating the Paladin from the entrance and exit of the shelter behind him. "Be careful of the poison," someone shouted from the Nephilim behind the Paladin team. But soon, I heard several mages shouting one after another, "No, it's not poison gas, that's an exorcism potion." Damn it, how could they just take out such a huge piece of something as valuable as the exorcism potion? Hearing someone say this, other mages also howled loudly, "Have you forgotten? Lady Tia is also here with them." The main reason why that kind of medicine is expensive is that the process is complicated. If all of us work together for 2 years, we may not be able to make so many. She's right. But as for Taya, I'm afraid she can do it in less than a month, right? If these mages knew that Tia actually made 50 kilograms of this exorcism potion in just 2 hours, these guys would probably vomit blood and die on the spot. God, it would be great if I could recruit her into the order. The mages are still sighing. If we had so many exorcism potions, we could go straight to the monastery hall. Yes, yes. Seeing that the mages had been talking for a long time without getting to the point, The other Nephilims next to them finally couldn't help but yell, "What is the use of this thing? What impact will it have on us? Ah! Oh, so many exorcism potions, I'm afraid they can completely separate us from the magic outside. They, probably, can make us lose magic." What? After hearing the mage's key points, the other magic class Nephilims immediately tried to call on magic. As a result, after trying it, they found that the magic that was originally as inexhaustible as the sea water suddenly became as scarce as rain in the desert. Damn, I can only use 5 or 6 more level 3 magics. I'm about the same, I can only release 2 level 4. Such words spread rapidly among the Nephilims like a plague. For a time, shock and panic, anger and regret, intertwined into a big net, and clasped everyone hard. Beautiful Ruger saw that the explosion position and dispersion of the 6 shells were better than he expected, and he couldn't help but praise Tia immediately. He named this thing PM Bullet, which actually means Magic Breaking Bullet. From the beginning, he didn't intend to make this thing play such a thorough exorcism effect. In his mind, if he could reduce the magic recovery speed of the Paladin cult by half, it would be enough. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao. Chapter 223. Now it seems that he still underestimated Tia's strength in making alchemy potions. He had seen Tia use exorcism potions before. She sprinkled them around the broken house where she temporarily stayed to prevent the surrounding monsters from following the smell and destroying the powders on the alchemy workbench she placed on the second floor of the broken house. It was also after moving to the second shelter that Tia used it to remove the remaining magic energy in the shelter. It was precisely because he knew their effects that Ruger commissioned Tia to make some of these things for backup. Google search Furtkin. With this thing, even if he and his friends were not there, the second shelter could still withstand the impact of quasi-nightmare level monsters with only humans guarding themselves. But he didn't expect that the one who ran over to help him test the gun was not a monster, but a brain-stunned Paladin cult. The morale of the Paladin cult over there was seriously low due to the influence of the exorcism potion. The back row ranged professionals, who were originally the trump cards, had just prepared to cover the ordinary humans who used the weapons of the Lost Ones with firepower as soon as they arrived at the designated location. However, before they arrived at the location, their magic power supply was cut off first. This was equivalent to the ammunition truck of the artillery battalion being taken away. The artillery in the artillery battalion was still the old-fashioned towed artillery, without an automatic loader, let alone a separate ammunition compartment. As a result, only a few scattered shells were left. This little ammunition was not enough for the mages to cover the firepower, let alone for them to protect themselves. On the other hand, although the human guards did not know what happened specifically, they immediately panicked when they saw that their superiors fired special shells to cut off the enemy's retreat. How could they not know that their side had gained an advantage? So they fired more vigorously with the machine guns in their hands. The original 4 machine guns were all fed by 250-round ammunition boxes and belts. Even if they fired a short burst every 2 seconds, it would only be enough for 3 to 5 minutes. However, this time, Ruger simply gave them a super-large ammunition belt box used by a certain army when using the M134 6-barrel rotary machine gun as an aircraft machine gun on a helicopter. This ammunition belt box has a maximum capacity of 4,000 rounds. Because of the large amount of ammunition and the ammunition belt, the weight is much heavier than the 250-round ammunition belt box. It is not easy to lift such a heavy ammunition belt up all the time relying solely on the movement of the MG3's bolt. But the ammunition belt box cannot be placed on the bolt for convenience, as it is easy to be hit by the enemy and explode. Therefore, there is also a set of ammunition feeding and boosting system including motors in this ammunition belt box. With these things, the 10 machine gunners, with the help of 3 assistants, have been firing very comfortably until now. The barrels have been replaced 2 or 3 times due to overheating, but less than half of the ammunition in the ammunition box has been fired. After the exorcist shells showed their power, the gunners immediately seized the opportunity and fired a series of intensive shots at the crumbling Paladin defense formation. The Paladin's defensive aura formation was already overwhelmed and could collapse at any time. Now that the connection with the outside magic power has been cut off, the Paladins can only rely on the holy light in their bodies. The only thing to be thankful for is that among all the Nephilim power systems, the Paladin's power system is the most special. Compared with mages, they have stronger physical strength. Compared with melee professions such as barbarians, they are more proficient in magic abilities. This results in them being able to hold more reserve magic power in their bodies than other professions. In the Lost Ruins without magic power, Minerva, who has completely trained her body, is almost unaffected. Sarah, whose power system is between that of an ordinary rogue and an Amazon warrior, has no big problem. Not to mention Tia, an alchemist who already masters the weapons of the lost. But the rest, whether witch mages, necromancers, or druids, will have extremely poor endurance because they do not have the magic power in the environment to supply themselves. Paladins are just between them. Even though the source of magic power was cut off, the holy light on their bodies still trickled into defensive aura and joined the battle formation. And it seemed that they could hold on for a long time. However, under the intensive firepower attack of 10 machine guns, the speed at which the defensive aura was consumed increased further, and even these paladins, whose endurance was already amazing enough, gradually showed signs of fatigue. The 4 vanguard knights in the lead were even more miserable. They staggered as if they had already lost their strength, and only the last instinct was left to support them to move forward unconsciously. The shields in their hands were pierced and shattered, and scattered directly on the ground. The plate armor on their bodies was also pierced, and bright red blood slowly seeped out from the gap. They didn't even have time to use the recovery aura to stop the bleeding. But they still persisted. Go forward. The mage couldn't suppress the machine gun with long-range firepower, so the paladin continued to hold on. Because they hadn't lost yet, they still had a chance to turn the tables. Because in their battle formation, there are still a few barbarians who will not lose most of their combat power due to the disconnection from magic, as well as Amazon female warriors. As long as they advance another 20 meters, no, as long as they advance another 10 meters, they can launch a close-range charge against Lugger and the group of humans. By then, everything will be over. This is something that every paladin has no doubt in his heart. This is the driving force that supports them to move forward. Even though they were enemies, seeing them march forward so resolutely and bravely, even Sarah couldn't help but praise them. However, she didn't forget that the enemy came out in full force this time mainly to deal with her. Seeing them like this, she raised the horn again and shouted to Ruger behind her, "Don't we need to take action yet?" No. Ruger's answer was also simple and clear. To be honest, according to his original idea, Sarah's 2 tank guns were still an indispensable force in this battle. But he didn't expect Tia's PM bullets to be so effective, several times better than he expected. Originally, Sarah needed 2 shots to break the local defense, but now it seems that as long as the machine guns under her men work harder, they can handle it themselves. In this case, there is no need to let Sarah and others take action. After all, the enemy attacked their own nest, and being able to repel them with their own strength is also the hospitality that the landlord should have. Looking at the defensive aura on the battle formation of the paladin cult that was swaying like a candle in the wind, Ruger calculated the timing bit by bit. If there is any biggest gain from observing the other party's spiritual energy formation during this period, it is that he has a vague grasp of the energy transmission veins of the other party's formation. This is like an oil pipeline running under a manual oil pump. The oil it transmits seems to be endless, but in fact it has its own rhythm like a heartbeat. As for oil transmission, when the pipeline is full of oil, a shot will only pierce the pipeline, and the oil will flow out, which will at most ignite a small fire, but the damage to the pipeline itself will not be serious. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 224. Pure oil is just fuel, and an oxidant is needed to burn it. Google search reading. That is air, or oxygen in the air. If you wait for the pulse-like oil supply to be transmitted, there will only be air in the oil supply pipeline, and a shot will not cause much damage. But if you take advantage of the fact that a wave of oil has just been delivered but not completely, and there is half of the oil in the pipeline and shoot it. Google searched can. The oil in the pipeline may be ignited. If you are lucky, the oil in the pipeline will be vaporized to a certain extent and diffused in the air in the pipeline. Then reply. Bang. Boom. In a flash, Ruger seemed to catch the pulse in his perception, so he immediately pressed the launch button on the joystick. The fourth tungsten alloy piercing rod was finally fired. At the same time, the shield in the hand of Paladin Austin, the leader of the Paladin battle formation, finally broke completely with a click. The solid shield surface broke into 4 pieces of different sizes from the handshake, and fell to the ground one after another. Behind the broken shield, the plate armor breastplate that was once dazzling and as clean as a mirror was pierced with a not-so-thick tungsten alloy rod. Saint Austin looked confused, and numbly reached out to support it, trying to pull the rod out of his chest. However, after several attempts, the rod not only did not move, but blood slowly flowed out from the gap and even the gap in the armor. How could it be possible? With a bang, Austin, the once invincible paladin, fell in a pool of blood so easily. Captain! Captain! Oh no, the captain fainted. The members of the cult behind him exclaimed. After a period of commotion, the shouting in the battle array changed. Retreat! Retreat quickly! Retreat quickly and treat the leader. As long as the leader is still here and the cult is still here, we will be able to avenge today one day. As long as people are still here, hope is still here. Retreat, retreat quickly. In a panic, some people in the Paladin cult even tore off their white clothes and tied them to their weapons and stood them up. The meaning couldn't be more obvious, raising the national flag and saluting. Think about the MG3 machine gun, AGM howitzer, and the production of 2 Boxer armored vehicles on Ruger's side. All this seems familiar. Okay, today's milk hair is done. Seeing these people retreating in a panic and not forgetting to put up their comrades, Ruger hesitated on the launcher for a long time, and finally withdrew. Let them go. He picked up the communicator and said lightly to the human guards and Tia. Let them take everything that happened today back and tell everyone. Let them remember forever that if they dare to provoke us, they will be dealt a decisive blow from us. Long live the second shelter. The crowd, who were originally puzzled by his letting the enemy go, couldn't help but shout loudly with pride in their hearts after hearing him speak the most heroic words in the calmest tone. I didn't expect you to have this trick, Sarah said in an inexplicable tone. Why don't you kill them? Are you afraid that Rogue Town will retaliate? After getting rid of these people, Rogue Town will only have us as its military force. Ruger just smiled when he heard this, without any excuse or reply. Instead, he pretended to be relaxed and stretched his body, saying to her, You can set off. Now, no one can stop you. Listening to his seemingly double entendre words, Sarah was somewhat stunned. After coming to her senses, she no longer asked why Ruger let those people go. She just stood out from the commander's cabin, waved to Ruger and Tia, and ordered Rog on the 2 tanks, go. The 2 steel behemoths made roars like sobbing one after another. It was as if the king of the forest, who had been sleeping all night, had just finished a good night's sleep and was ready to start patrolling his chassis and find something to eat. The two beasts quickly rushed out along the entrance and exit of the shelter one after another. During the period, they also passed by the defeated and retreating paladin cult, but the two sides just stared at each other, and neither side made any extra movements. Until they were completely out of contact with these people, the HK-21 girl who was controlling the coaxial machine gun in the gunner position on the modified Leopard breathed a sigh of relief, as if the situation just now made her so nervous that she almost forgot to breathe. At the same time, the MP5 girl in the loader position on the Leopard 2 in front also asked Sarah in the gunner position with a confused look. "Sir, why? Why didn't Lord Lugger continue to chase those guys? Aren't they also hostile?" "Yes, why," Sarah sighed in an unknown tone, "maybe, it's for balance." "Balance? What do you mean?" MP5's sister was even more confused. Sarah didn't answer her again, but turned back to look in the direction of Lugger. Her eyes were erratic, and I don't know what she was thinking. On the other side, Lugger and Tia in the shelter had both come out of their respective boxers to check the battlefield debris of this conflict. The attacking paladin order did not leave any bodies. Since Lugger decided to agree to their surrender and retreat, he would not deliberately prevent them from pulling back the bodies of their comrades. In addition to the holes that Tia had blown up with heavy artillery high-explosive shells, the most important thing on the battlefield was the broken shields and armor fragments of the paladins. He thought these things were just garbage, but he recycled them as warhead materials just for the sake of metal products. As a result, he found that just recycling the fragments of 4 or 5 broken shields actually gave him an extra 300 plus points. He couldn't sell these things directly to the system store. But when they were recycled as materials, the magic-related parts of them could not be restored to raw materials, so they were taken away by the system. The points he earned were to make up for the price difference. But think about it, if the fragments alone can recycle about 100 points, what if he gets an intact shield and recycles it as raw materials? Wouldn't the compensation points be more? However, the monsters he defeated in the past were not without weapons and equipment. He has always cleaned up whenever he has time, should I say clean up the battlefield? During this period, there were quite a few dark archer bows, leather armors, etc. that were recovered, but there was no point compensation. Why is this so? Is it that the Nephilim equipment is different from the monster equipment? Or, because the owner of these equipment was not killed by me, the points of the equipment part were not counted into the points of killing the owner? Or, these paladin equipment are special in themselves? No matter which one it is, Ruger thinks this matter can be studied carefully. There are always too many ways to make money. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 225. Seeing Lugger let go of his enemy, but happily picking up the remaining garbage on the ground, Taya, who was following him, felt moved. Brother Lu, thank you." The little girl hesitated for a long time, but finally said what was in her heart. "Searched can on Google." "Thank me? Thank me for what?" Lugger was a little dazed. "Thank you for not killing those people," Tia explained. "I know that as long as you want to, none of those people can actually run away. But you still let them go. So, thank you, Brother Lu, including Anya's share." To be honest, Lugger really didn't think much about it. After Taya finished speaking, he realized that to him, the people of the Holy Knight Order were not much different from monsters. They were nothing more than the difference between mountain robbers and mountain beasts. But for Tia, especially Anya, they are companions who have lived together since childhood. Among these people, if you pick out a small number of those who are extremely evil, most of them are just fellow countrymen or even compatriots with whom Taya has not a good relationship, but it is hard to say that they are bad. For Anya, those people were really good friends who used to be close to each other. To be fair, If Ruger was Tia and had been systematically excluded by the Holy Knight Order, he would definitely not be as generous as Tia is now. Even if the other party adopts a stick and carrot tactic of finding faults and ostracizing some people, while others take the initiative to show favor and win over, he will not give up his hostility towards these people. In the final analysis, these people are not his compatriots, nor acquaintances who have lived with him for more than 10 or nearly 20 years. He has no feelings for them. However, Tia still has feelings for them. So, Luge smiled gently at her and said, "Don't take it to heart, I'm happy to serve my lady Tia." "Ha, I hate it. It's weird when you talk like this." Tia was so amused by his pretending to be a gentleman that she burst out laughing. The atmosphere that could not be described as solemn but somewhat dull before was also swept away by this laughter. "Speaking of which, where is Anya? I didn't pay attention to her before. Is she okay?" Luge looked around and asked again. "She's fine." Tia pointed to the back row, the back corner of her AGM boxer. A certain witch was leaning against the corner of the wall and cautiously looking out. However, she was looked at by Ruger, who followed Tia's instructions and looked over. Seeing that her whereabouts were exposed by Tia, Anya had no choice but to walk out of the corner and walk to Luge step by step. After squirming for a while, she said softly, "Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't help, I couldn't help." Luigi was happy again when he heard this, and thought to himself, why do these two little girls in his family have the same temper? Not to mention being domineering on weekdays, he is also unparalleled in arrogance. He is as proud as a rooster and does not bow his head easily. But now, one after another, she has turned into a weak little girl, looking like a good girl who is afraid of being punished by the teacher. However, maybe this face that is completely different from when they communicate with other people is the real face they use to face their teachers. Shaking his head in amusement, he patted Anya's head, straightened the mage ring on her head, and said softly, "It's better if you don't come out for this kind of thing. After all, they were your friends before. I don't want your hands to be stained with the blood of your friends." Being comforted by Luigi softly, Anya, who had been feeling uneasy but in a dilemma, didn't know whether to laugh or cry for a moment. After being excited for a long time, she finally had no choice but to throw herself into Lugger's arms and sob silently under his broad shoulders, hoping to turn all her previous grievances and uneasiness into tears and stain them on the clothes of the man in front of her. Who told him to be his grandfather? Who allowed him, as his male elder, to appear in his life until not long ago? I wanted to tell him my grievances and helplessness one by one, bit by bit, so that he could comfort me. Okay, if you have any grievances, just cry out." Lugger was clearly holding a young girl in his arms, but he really didn't miss her at all. It's almost the same feeling as when you comfort your sister or even your niece. He was even thinking at this time, could this be the power of blood? Even if he is in a different plane, he is still her grandfather? He hugged Anya and comforted her for a long time. Tia beside him couldn't stand it anymore and ran over to join the hug. Then, the two little ones secretly staged a secret battle for territory in his arms. Several times, the two little guys played dirty tricks on each other but failed to win each other, and instead suffered a lot for Lugger. He found that if they continued like this, nothing would happen to the two little nephews, who were rough-skinned and thick-bodied. His small body, which was at the limit of an ordinary person at best, could not withstand them. So he quickly took the opportunity to help the two little ones out of his arms, coughed lightly and said to Anya, "However, I hope you are mentally prepared for one thing." He raised his hand and pointed in the direction where the members of the Holy Knight Order were escaping. "They suffered a big loss at my hands today. Next time we meet, they won't dare or can't do anything to me. But they will definitely take their hatred of me and blame it on others. Especially you, Anya. Those with kind and peaceful personalities will just keep their distance from you. But those who are originally like raging fire will even take out several times the resentment on you. But don't be afraid, and don't be sad. Just remember that when that time comes, they will let you down. And you have never let them down from the beginning to the end. It is others who let you down, not you who let others down. At that time, you still don't have to take the initiative to do anything to them. But you have to understand that you have new friends and your current family, and you are also responsible for us. You, protect yourself. Return to your family intact. Got it? If it weren't for the two girls being too kind, Ruger really wouldn't have thought of giving them this kind of emotional vaccination. These words seem to be said to Anya, but in fact, aren't they also admonishing Tia? Anya is facing the Paladin cult, a force that has now clearly become Ruger's enemy. So even if she couldn't fully digest this emotionally, at least she had made sufficient mental preparations. But one day in the future, who would appear beside Tia and want to use past feelings to harm Ruger or even herself? It might not be who. Ruger was not the type who cared about someone and would put her in a sterile room 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, under the euphemism of protection. He hoped that they would have stronger bodies. Physically and even mentally. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 226. Ruger recovered the remaining things on the battlefield. Google search reading. Then let the two little ones cooperate with each other to deal with the magic that permeated the shelter from the people of the cult. After arranging these, he went to the firing point to cheer up the human guards who were cleaning shells and counting ammunition. In any case, their performance in this battle was very good, which exceeded Ruger's expectations of them. They were the kind of ordinary humans with higher spirits, so they followed Ruger to come here to open up Wasteland. But they are just ordinary humans after all. Having lived in Rogue Town for a lifetime, what they have seen and heard is how powerful the Nephilim are. Even though Ruger fought two Nephilims with a set of lost weapons last time, one died and the other was captured, and he also beat the Paladin Austin so that he dared not overpower others, which gave them a little more hope that they could also become qualified combat forces. But there is still a huge distance between hope and reality. But in this battle, they finally realized their dreams. Although they only used the machine guns mounted on the firing point to assist Lugger and Tia in the strafe, this job was not as easy as it sounds. MG3 is a barrel recoil automatic principle. When each bullet moves forward in the barrel under the thrust of gunpowder gas, the barrel and the bolt recoil at the same time. Until the bullet flies out of the barrel, the pressure in the barrel drops. After a series of operations, the barrel is reset, and the bolt extracts the shell and presses the next bullet into it to complete the reloading, and returns to its original position until the next shot. Under normal circumstances, according to the law of conservation of momentum, as long as the mass and speed of the bullet flying out are fixed, the backward momentum of the gun body itself is also fixed. And because the mass of the gun body is fixed, this part of kinetic energy can also be calculated. The process of recoil is the process of converting this part of kinetic energy into mechanical work. The work done by force on an object is the product of the force on the object and the displacement distance of the object in the direction of the force. Then, under the condition of fixed mechanical work, the longer the distance of work done, the smaller the force. The barrel recoil automatic principle uses this to reduce the perceptible recoil. If there is no separate recoil of the barrel, this part of the energy will be consumed by the recoil process of the entire gun body, so the shooter will feel more recoil. But even so, even if there is a relief from the gun frame, the burden on the machine gunner's body is still great if there are too many bullets. In addition, while the barrel recoil reduces the perceptible recoil and improves the maneuverability, it also inevitably reduces the accuracy. As mentioned before, when the projectile moves forward in the barrel under the action of gunpowder gas, the barrel has already moved backward. It's just that because of the larger mass, the barrel speed is not high at this time. But even so, this will inevitably have a negative impact on the accuracy of the bullet. So the human guards were able to shoot so accurately before, and they also had a lot of training in their daily lives. Although, these can be attributed to the fact that Ruger has taken out a lot of ammunition for their training. Boys, you did a good job. Ruger looked at the people who were still picking up shells in a mess and shouted like a general on a tour. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Well, today's lunch is a snack, 1 pound of roasted lamb legs per person. Long live. Well, the shells are collected and sent to the alchemy workshop. 3 ammunition feeders, send the remaining unused ammunition boxes over, and replace them with regular 250 round ammunition boxes here. Ah. Sir, this big ammunition box is very useful, can't it be kept in stock? A human soldier who has been familiar with Tia for a long time and has a close relationship with Ruger sighed. Hee, it's a beautiful thought. Ruger glanced at him and smiled. Do you know how much this ammunition box costs? Let me tell you, it's enough for you to eat 2 pounds of roasted lamb legs every day for a year. What he said is not wrong. At the beginning, the tungsten core armor-piercing bullets for shotguns only had 8 rounds for 2 points. But that was because too much material was used and there was no mass-produced version for military use. The M993 tungsten core armor-piercing bullets that Ruger used for MG3 were priced much lower than the special bullets for shotguns, but 1 point only had about 40 rounds. A box of ammunition had 4,000 rounds of ammunition, and the ammunition alone cost 100 points. 2 points could be exchanged for 20 kilograms of roasted lamb legs. A person eats 3 or 4 kilograms a day, and 2 points of lamb is enough for a week. There are 51 weeks in a year, and 2 points a day is 102 points a year. Calculated in this way, the points of a box of ammunition are enough for a person to eat roasted lamb for a year. Of course, if this box of ammunition was really that expensive, Ruger would not have taken out 10 sets at a time. This is 1,000 points, what can't be done with it? Are you kidding? Wouldn't it be the same if it was replaced with a 250-round box of ammunition? The reason why he was so rich that he replaced them with 4,000 rounds was mainly because he got a discount on this batch of ammunition. And the discount was not low. Because he had seized a batch of ammunition in the underground camp before. After all, it was a special armored battalion camp, and the ammunition was for tanks and armored vehicles, so there would be more armor-piercing shells that could pose a certain threat to enemy vehicles. However, Ruger would not say these things, and the soldiers would naturally not know them. The meat in this world comes from demonized animals, and ordinary people can basically not eat it. Unless it has been processed by the alchemist with alchemy potions. Someone had the good fortune to eat the barbecue that Master Tia kindly distributed to the humans working in the alchemy workshop. So, when he heard that this box of bullets was enough for one person to eat for a year, the man looked at the ammunition box in the ammunition supply man's eyes, and a faint green light appeared. The kind of forest wolf. And this look soon spread to all the machine gunners. Even the 3 ammunition supply men had different looks. Seeing this, Ruger hurriedly coughed and scolded, "Okay, stop looking. You don't have the ability to change them into meat if you look at them again. If you want to eat more meat, train well, complete the mission well, and guard your master Tia, the great alchemist, and you still worry about not having meat to eat? For these humans, the word Tia is a golden signboard. After all, she is kind and knows so many things, she is simply a goddess for ordinary people." Hearing Ruger mention her, the human guards finally recovered from the state of not having eaten for several days. Seeing that they had regained their sanity, Luger wiped the non-existent cold sweat from his forehead, coughed lightly, and hurriedly talked about the last thing. "You performed well today. So I decided to upgrade your equipment. I will replace the machine guns in the original 4 positions here with larger calibers. Starting tomorrow, you will rotate in daily training to familiarize yourself with the new guns and adapt to their performance as soon as possible. Although the probability is not high, if those guys dare to come back to trouble us again in the next 2 days, I want you to fight better than today. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu Mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 227. Can you do it? Ruger shouted out at last. Yes, X13. Speak louder, I can't hear you. Yes. Do it? Very good. Ruger had his fill of being a leader, and was very satisfied. He added, add half a pound of roasted pork belly per person at noon, and then walked away leisurely. That posture, regardless of the number of people, he was actually a miserable leader, barely only half a platoon leader. He had actually thought about changing the guns for human soldiers a long time ago. Although the 762 full power bullet was enough to deal with the monsters nearby, it would not make much difference to change to small caliber bullets, but the time stage was different now. Before, it was the pioneering period, everything was kept simple, and the main purpose was to adapt to the surrounding environment as quickly as possible. Now the base has been built, the facilities are complete, and even the food supply can be self-sufficient because the fungal blanket has opened. This pioneering period has ended successfully. The next step is to shift your sights away from the monsters and consider other enemies. For example, the Paladin Order in the not-so-far-away town of Rogue had no good plan. If he hadn't been thinking about dealing with them, Ruger wouldn't have taken out so many defensive measures when they suddenly came to him. If he was dealing with the Paladins, the 762 full power bullet would not be enough. Then, it would be time to use the 7x99mm machine gun bullet, which is 50 BMG. The gun type is also ready, and it is also the M2 Browning heavy machine gun of the old man in World War II. However, whether it is the Zoo family in the World War II era or the Zoo family of the Special Operations Battalion in later generations, this thing is rare. If Ruger took out 4 guns at once, he would have to pay for it himself. However, because this is an old gun from World War II, the manufacturing process is not high, so Ruger has made a few of these things while he was busy with the tank these days. Of course, the reason why he suddenly remembered the heavy machine gun again was not just to upgrade his own. When he was in the underground maze of the Forgotten Tower, Ruger and his friends wanted to get more good guns from him. For example, the 2 G3s in hand were replaced with HK417. At that time, Ruger dealt with them. But in recent days, they have come to the door to ask for tanks, and they will not forget this thing. Ruger wanted to use MG3 to get rid of them at that time, but the lady who also held the general machine HK21 refused to do so and had to prove that it was better to use HK21 than MG3. As a result, the result was of course that the lady stopped talking. After all, the MG3 is based on MG42. Although there are many criticisms in later generations, saying that its greatest significance lies in destocking, not really. Its foundation is indeed an excellent general-purpose machine gun, medium-caliber machine gun. But HK21, the foundation is G3, which is a good automatic rifle with closed bolt standby. The single-shot accuracy of the machine gun with open bolt standby is poor, but the burst accuracy is good. The single-shot accuracy of the rifle with closed bolt standby is good, but the burst accuracy is poor. Of course, the good and bad here are relative. Burst shooting is 2 or 3 shots, 3 or 5 shots at a time. The point of view is more concerned with the consistency of the perceptible recoil of the gun. The perceptible recoil is consistent, that is, the recoil of the first few bullets is the same, and the shooter is used to the same force, and then he can control the gun just right. For a closed-chamber firearm, the perceptible recoil of the first shot is quite different from that of the next few shots. but the machine gun has a firing rate of hundreds or thousands of rounds per minute, and it takes less than 1 second to fire 2 or 3 bullets. In such a short time, it is difficult for the shooter to adjust the force of controlling the gun in time, which will result in poor accuracy. As a rogue elite, Miss HK-21 is of course much stronger than ordinary people. Moreover, rogues themselves take the route of long-range shooters with quick reactions, so they are quite good at crushing humans with their physical advantages. Therefore, the accuracy of HK-21's G3 modified machine gun is still good in the hands of the little sister. But after using MG3, especially MG3 on the gun rack, Miss 21 is speechless. Although the thing has a faster rate of fire, it has a small recoil and good accuracy. Of course, she would not trade it for the HK-21 in her hand, but it is difficult to convince the other two sisters who use G3 to make the same choice. However, Ruger is very kind to women. After finding out that they are really not interested in MG3, he came up with other ideas. It is absolutely impossible to replace all their guns with HK-417. That thing is so expensive. Even if Ruger takes the time to make 2 for himself, it is still too expensive. If this sets a precedent, Sarah will say that she will simply replace all her subordinates with HK-417, which will be terrible. Even if Sarah buys it at the original price, Ruger still doesn't want to waste this time. Moreover, as the battle line advances towards the monster's lair, the monster's defense is getting stronger and stronger. After really attacking the monster's base camp, the monastery, I am afraid that the problem of insufficient penetration of the 762 full power bullet will appear again. Ruger thought, it is better to do it in one step. In his plan, commander-level combatants like Sarah would at most replace their guns with rapid-fire cannons, just like himself, carrying a 30mm machine gun to deal with the monster elites. As for the rogue elites, they could simply replace their guns with large-caliber anti-material rifles and heavy machine guns that use the same caliber bullets. At this point, some people who understand are puzzled. Isn't this right? HK-417 is too expensive? The unit price of that gun is less than $10,000. Anti-material rifles, such as Barrett's M82 and M107, are directly over $10,000. As for the M2 heavy machine gun, because it is an old gun, it is a military gun and is not sold to civilians. It is sold in bulk by arms dealers between countries, so the price is kept down. But even so, the unit price should be around $10,000 to $20,000. Well, you just complained about the expensiveness of something less than $10,000, and then you want to wholesale it for $10,000 or $20,000. This doesn't make sense. How to explain this? Ruger thinks this way. Spending 300 yuan on a meal of raw fish and rice is expensive. But spending 500 yuan on an unlimited barbecue buffet with steak and lamb legs, and the ingredients are all real and safe, then people don't think it's expensive. Large caliber firearms are definitely different from medium caliber ones. Besides, the unit price is not much different. Of course, there are reasons why they are expensive, but unfortunately, Ruger doesn't need the expensive part. In short, he set his sights on large caliber weapons. Then, he thought again that large caliber anti-material rifles are mostly Barrett's. The gun itself also uses the same short recoil barrel as MG3 and M2, and its accuracy is somewhat unworthy of the word sniper rifle, so it is generally called anti-material rifle according to its serious purpose. This gun is not for ordinary people. If Ruger uses it, why must it be semi-automatic? Wouldn't it be better to change it to full automatic and let it fire short bursts? Just like, well, like HK-21. Of course, it would be better to solve the problem of first shot deviation and improve its basic point accuracy. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shanmao Aichiji. Chapter 228. However, this is just a concept. If it is really done well, it is equivalent to Ruger designing a new gun by himself. In that case, it is best to experience the temperament and character of the old gun first. So, he set his sights on the M2 heavy machine gun. Not only the M2, after he figured it out, the next step is to make the M10701 by himself. But this thing is mature, but the gun body is too long. The total length of the 20-inch barrel version is 219 meters, and the 29-inch barrel version is almost 1.5 meters, a total of 448 meters. The weight is 4 kilograms and the other 13 kilograms. It can be used by Ruger, but it is not necessary. So he also plans to study the bullpup structure of M90 and M95, and strive to reduce the total length and weight. The bullpup structure is the structure used by China 95, Austrian AUG, French FAMAS, hexagram TAR, etc., with the magazine behind the gun grip. In fact, it is not really without a buttstock, but the core of the rifle, the bolt, is placed in the buttstock position. In this way, the barrel is connected to the front of the bolt, and the overall length of the gun can be shortened by a considerable amount. Compared with the traditional AK and AR series, the short part is almost the original buttstock section, which is probably why it is called buttless structure. The FAMAS mentioned above has a total length of 757 mm, and the TAR-21 has a shorter barrel and a total length of only 706 mm. In comparison, the standard AK-74 has a total length of 930 mm, and the G3 barrel used by Rogers is only 450 mm, and the total length of the gun is over 1 meter, which is 1025 mm. The M401 carbine has a buttstock of 840 mm when it is unfolded, and 757 mm when it is retracted. In terms of data, the M401 carbine and FAMAS seem to have the same length, but the carbine is a cavalry rifle with a shorter barrel. This barrel is only 5 inches, which is 3 mm. The TAR-21 has a shorter barrel, but it is still 460 mm. The FAMAS barrel is 488 mm long. For example, the standard M10701 has a length of nearly 45 meters. The M90 with a bullpup structure has a 29-inch barrel and a length of 143 meters. The M95 is the same in size and weighs about 10 kilograms. The rogues still use this thing to shoot monsters about 100 meters away, so there is no need for the barrel to be too long. If it is replaced with a 20-inch barrel, the length of the gun can be reduced to 914 millimeters, which is 100 millimeters shorter than the 1025 millimeters of the G3. As long as the propellant of the bullet burns sufficiently and the bullet can get enough kinetic energy, a shorter barrel is not completely unacceptable. The gun body is short enough, and the rogues can use it after a little adaptation from the G3 to the new gun. As for the weight, compared with the size, it is not so unbearable for the rogues. Of course, his design is not so perfect. The magazine of the bullpup structure is behind the grip, roughly at the position of the cheek rest. The 7x99mm bullet is long and large, and the magazine size is also large. Moreover, as a rapid-fire weapon, it cannot only use the original 5-round or 10-round magazine, but must increase the capacity to about 15-20 rounds. Such a large-sized magazine, and at the cheek rest position, must be uncomfortable to hold. And with this posture, changing the magazine is another problem. The bullpup rifle itself is a bit awkward in changing the magazine, especially after adapting to other firearms. Now the magazine has to be fatter and larger, and there are definitely problems in this area. When he made a single-soldier rapid-fire cannon for himself, he compromised in terms of ammunition capacity. This time, the 7mm automatic rifle plan does not seem to have such a smooth road ahead. However, Ruger is now very open-minded about these things. First, according to the plan, he replaced the machine gun firepower point with 4 M2s, and then he went back to the alchemy workshop to continue to look at the M82/M107 method. Anyway, things are always behind the plan, but you can't just wait for changes without making plans. So he didn't force it? What can he do if he forced it? Think about the Paladin Order. This time, I don't know where I got the information from, and I want to go directly to the door to suppress Sarah and suppress the advancing rogue troops. In order to achieve this goal, the entire Paladin Order came out in full force. According to the plan of St. Austin, Sarah only brought 4 guards with her, and dared to go deep into the dangerous area. No matter how strong she is at most a level stronger than Austin himself. That lost one is indeed strong enough, plus Tia, 3 people count as 4 of his own strength. This should be enough, right? If I can't deal with it alone, it should be more than enough to bring the entire Paladin Order, right? As for those ordinary humans, do I need to care? But in the end, Sarah, who Austin thought was the strongest, didn't even make a move. It was the 2 cannons of Tia and Rogue, plus the machine guns of 10 human guards, that actually beat the entire Paladin Order so badly. Although it happened suddenly, it was unintentional, and the Paladin side may not have exerted 60% to 70% of its strength. But war is always like this. A typical plan cannot keep up with the changes. As a result, not only did he not take Sarah back to Rogue Town, Austin even lost himself. Although the people of the Paladin Order thought he had fainted from exhaustion and tried to take him back to treat him, Ruger knew that he was already dead. Austin had died under Ruger's 4th tungsten alloy rod. Because there was such a record in his system. Kill the cunning demon god Belial's chosen one, champion knight Austin a carat, and get 725 points. In fact, at least half of the reason why Ruger let the people of the Paladin Order go was that he was distracted by the huge amount of information in this record at that time. He didn't think about the best action for a while. When the brain core's operating power returned to normal, the best time to take other countermeasures had been missed, so it was better to let those guys go. It can be seen how much impact this information had on Ruger. Killing Austin alone will get 725 points. This is as much as the reward for Ruger's most recent system task. And it's more than that. Even if monsters and ghosts are counted, this Austin has the most points. But Ruger is not surprised at all that he has so many points. Because this prefix really deserves this point. The demon god's chosen one is at least 1 level higher than the followers and favored ones. After the demon god's chosen, there is also the title of champion knight. This is almost equivalent to the incarnation of the demon god in this plane, right? Killing a demon god's incarnation, the points are 700 plus, which is really not much. However, in addition to the surprise, Ruger also has a little more pressure. When he killed Bald Daniel before, he found that he was a follower of Belial, and Ruger was just suspicious. Now even the Paladin of the Paladin Order is Belial's, and the title is so high, so there is no need to doubt it now, it has been hammered. This Paladin Order that has emerged out of nowhere and has been suppressing rogue and ordinary humans is indeed the king of lies Belial, no, now it is the cunning demon Belial, the human traitor planted in Rogue Town. Although it is not known what specific purpose the cunning demon wants to achieve, it is definitely an enemy. It is a big enemy. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 229. Beelzebub is definitely an enemy. Because first, it has been bullying Tia from the beginning. Second, it has been squeezing the living space of ordinary people and even the lost in Rogue Town. Third, it has openly troubled Ruger. In this case, it doesn't matter to Ruger what kind of calculations it has behind it. It is an enemy, a big enemy. According to the nature of the world of Diablo, the existence of the 7 demon kings of hell will eventually appear in the world. Then what Ruger has to do is very clear: be prepared, and when it shows its true form, kill it directly. What? The 7 demon kings of hell cannot be eliminated but can only be sealed? We'll see when the time comes. However, Ruger always feels that if he kills it, even if it is a demon or a god, it will most likely only become a huge score, and it is unlikely to exist. In short, he just needs to prepare as soon as possible. As for whether Rogue Town will fall into the hands of Beelzebub, Ruger believes that it is highly unlikely. There definitely hadn't been any before, otherwise Austin wouldn't have needed to come and escort Sarah and suppress Rogue in the name of Akara many times. Wouldn't it be possible to achieve the goal by directly turning all the people in Rogue Town, including the frontline Rogue, into Belial's followers? Not doing it, is it because you don't want to do it? Or can't do it? Ruger thinks it's the latter. After all, Belial himself is the kind of useless one among the 7 demon kings. The so-called king of lies has the feeling of too clever to scheme. As for the cunning demon god, is he better? What is cunning? Insidious and cunning, with many tricks. But in the chaotic world where human lives are worthless, wouldn't everything be destroyed if brute force was used to push it over? Why bother to plot? That can only be because the brute force is not enough. Having said that, Ruger also thinks that it has suffered a great loss this time, and it will probably do something in Rogue Town. Fortunately, the people that Ruger cares about are either by his side or with Sarah. There were no relatives or friends of his in Rogue Town, and no one that Tia cared about, so let that person do whatever he wanted. Let him do whatever he wanted, and if he wanted to cause trouble for Ruger, he had to break into the shelter first. Ruger also wanted to know how much strength would be left if a Demon King level being entered the ruins of the Lost without magic. Time passed little by little. Ruger's progress was pretty good. A day later, he really made 2 test versions of the large-bore automatic rifle. He asked Tia and Anya to accompany him to practice with monsters and guns, but after firing a few bullets, Tia impatiently threw the gun to Anya and ran back to the shelter first. In her words, "This thing sounds nice, the roar of gunpowder is very loud, but it's just thunder and rain, and it can only blow up a pit, which is boring. It's better to go back and make 2 more big bombs." In comparison, Anya's evaluation of this thing is much higher. She tried it with her own ice protection magic. A level 5 magic ice armor can completely block a combined attack of at least 10 nightmare level monsters, but it can't block 2 shots from this thing. However, with the point-to-point speed of this gun, it is easy to break one of her ice armors, but it is still a bit difficult to kill her with 3 consecutive shots. In any case, this gun should meet Ruger's design requirements, that is, only 1 or 2 bullets are needed to deal with ordinary monsters of nightmare level. If this can be replaced by the rogues, they may really be able to walk sideways in the major monster nests. The thing is made, and Ruger also wants to take the time to go to the front line to try it out. However, before he went there, the people on the front line ran to him first. The visitors are also old acquaintances, 2 of Sarah's guards, MP5 Sister Isa and HK21 Sister Liz. Their respective partners, G36 Sister Cindy and HK417 Sister Bella, did not follow. The purpose of the 2 people coming here is also relatively clear. First, to inform Ruger of the new progress of the front line, and at the same time to see the changes here, whether the Paladin Order has come to retaliate, and second, to drive away the small car that was left here before. Although it has only been 50 hours since Sarah left last time, just over 2 days, there are really many changes on the front line. On the day Sarah returned, she gathered the 8-man team required for 2 tanks from the front line Rogers. Then they went directly to the Tamo Highlands to practice the use of tanks in actual combat with monsters. It happened that there were Minerva and her magic-modified Ferdinand, as well as 3 human guards accompanying their Roger girlfriend. Their atypical tank crew can also serve as on-site instructors for the Rogers. Minerva even installed the spiked armor on the magic-modified Leopard, which is a pseudo-World War II tank with a short 88 gun installed on the chassis of the No. 5 tank, with the same magic-modified Ferdinand. With the horsepower and tonnage of the Leopard, the tank also learned from Minerva how to get in and out of the monster group by ramming. She also wanted to install a set for Sarah's Leopard 2A4, but was rejected by Sarah. Commander Rog meant that her tank had speed and firepower, and if it still needed to rely on ramming to win, it would be a bit too wasteful. Sarah's reasons were too sufficient. Although Minerva felt sorry, she didn't force it. What's more, the way tank armor was mounted in the Cold War era was completely different from that in the World War II era. The female barbarian warriors only knew how to add armor to World War II tanks, which was one of the reasons why she didn't force it. After a day of practice, Sarah personally commanded 3 heavy armored vehicles and dozens of light armored vehicles to launch a general attack on the monsters on the Tamo Plateau. Before, when there were only light armored patrol vehicles equipped with machine guns, the rogues could actually fight the high-level monsters on the Tamo Plateau on equal terms. But because the monastery is a monster nest, nightmare-level monsters will run out from time to time. Ordinary monsters are okay, but if you accidentally encounter elite nightmare monsters in groups of 3 or 5, it will be difficult for the rogues' light armored patrol vehicles to be preserved. Because she was afraid of losing the tank, Sarah didn't force the charge before. But now there are 3 heavy armored vehicles, the situation is completely different. Although Minerva's modified Ferdinand was jokingly called an infantry support vehicle by Ruger, its armor is still the foundation of a tank destroyer. Compared with tanks, it just doesn't have a movable turret, but both the chassis armor and the turret armor are still at the level of World War II heavy tanks. 3 sturdy tanks rushed to the front line and eliminated those overly powerful nightmare-level elites. The remaining rogues just had to output with peace of mind. The outcome of this battle was not suspenseful at all. In the 3rd hour after the war began, the rogues captured the entire Tamo Highlands and rushed straight to the gate of the monastery. Infinite Doomsday Start draws Luodu mechanic. Author, Shan Mao Ai-Chi-Ji. Chapter 230. The structure of the Monastery of the Blind Sisters is similar to that of the monasteries in the Lost World. It is a set of buildings and courtyards headed by the core church. Just like the temples or Taoist temples in China, after entering the courtyard gate, you first go to the corridor. Then from the corridor, you can go to various buildings and rooms in the courtyard. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow diamondsuit. Of course, the core of the courtyard is the main hall where the statues are enshrined. For the monastery here, the core is the cathedral of the rogues. After passing through the Tamo Highlands and arriving at the gate of the monastery, Sarah did not stop at all, and immediately used 2 tank guns to bombard the thick wooden door of the courtyard. She did not stop after completely blasting the gate open, and continued to destroy the walls on both sides of the wooden door. She stopped bombarding until a large gap was blasted there for enough vehicles to enter at the same time, and then she stopped supplying and repairing on the spot. At the same time, waiting for the magic power in the gate of the monastery to dissipate. Although the monastery itself is a large courtyard, and the area outside the buildings inside the courtyard is also open air, this part is not as thin in magic as the wild. On the contrary, because the main cathedral is controlled by the Queen of Pain Andariel and built into a monster nest, the concentration of magic here is far higher than anywhere else in the area. Even the open-air area inside the monastery can breed nightmare-level monsters. Of course, listening to the narration of MP5 Sister and HK21 Sister, the monsters generated there are not all nightmare-level, most of them can only be regarded as quasi-nightmare level. But even so, Sarah still took the principle of anticipating the enemy and taking a steady approach, pushing the monastery buildings all the way, and knocking down the gate wall, inner and outer corridors, and even other buildings before continuing to move forward. When the battle continued to the night of that day, almost all the outer buildings of the monastery were blown away by her. At the same time, the counterattack force of the monsters emerging from the buildings was gradually weakening. This made several old rogues who had felt a little sad about their ancestral property being blown up agree with Sarah's approach. After all, they also understood that in such an era, the rogues would have a chance to survive only if the problem of monsters was solved first. If one day all the rogues and even humans were killed by monsters, just preserving the integrity of the rogue monastery would only continue to serve as a nest for monsters. What use would it have? However, with the war at this point, it was actually difficult for Sarah to continue to push forward. She even took the initiative to withdraw the troops from the front line when night was about to fall. She went all the way back to the gate and dug trenches there to build fortifications to deal with the counterattack of monsters at night. The reason for this was that she had a great time fighting in this battle, but her ammunition was almost exhausted. It was also for this reason that she sent Issa and Liz here so early. A military off-road vehicle without even armor had no effect on the current front-line war. Sarah sent 2 people here. The main purpose is to buy more ammunition. Especially the shells for tank guns, all types and models are needed. Of course, since it is a purchase, the 2 sisters Rog did not come empty-handed. They also brought a lot of magic gems obtained from killing monsters in the past 2 days. So, you want to buy arms? Ruger asked as he looked at the 2 people who were about to take out the magic gems. Yes, HK-21 sister Liz nodded. Then let me ask, you are not going to use 2 G250s to pull the arms back, right? Ruger asked again. It should be okay, right? MP5 sister seemed to understand his concerns and explained, we tried it before, and the car can carry more than a ton of supplies and still run fast. No, it can carry a ton, but it can only carry about 40 rounds of tank shells, Ruger said helplessly. We can't just pile up the shells randomly and let you bump along the road. At least we need to add boxes. Including the packaging, the 2 of you can only bring back 80 shells. I guess Sarah has to buy extra ammunition. I'm afraid that the more than 300 shells I brought to her yesterday have almost been used up. It's far from enough for you 2 to transport them in one car. Then, what should we do? MP5 sister looked confused. Or, I simply organize a convoy and send a team to help you escort, Ruger asked. Of course that's great, HK-21 sister agreed immediately. When Ruger heard her impatient look, he knew that this was Sarah's plan and he was tricked by the 2 little guys. Hey, Issa, you acted confused well just now. Who did you learn this bad from? As he said, he looked at MP5 sister and glanced at HK-21 sister Liz. Apparently, he had found the source of Issa's bad behavior. After laughing and scolding the girl, Ruger called the soldiers over to select the members of the convoy. During the arrangement, he suddenly turned around and asked the 2 Rugers curiously, by the way, among the 4 of you, aren't Cindy and Bella the drivers? Aren't you 2 the gunners? Why did Sarah let you 2 be the drivers this time? The 2 looked at each other helplessly and said, Lady Sarah said that it's hard to find a good driver in Ruger now, but everyone is a good gunner. So, we need to focus on training our driving skills and strive to become good drivers. Ha, that's it, Lugger said with a smile. Okay, it's hard to find a driver here. Since you both have to drive the whole journey, I will arrange a gunman for you. Finally, 6 people were separated from Ruger to form an armored transport convoy with a transport capacity of 10 tons, preparing to accompany the 2 of them back to the Ruger front line. This batch of supplies, including the goods and transportation fees, consumed dozens of at least 3-level ordinary magic gems that the 2 Rogs brought this time. Before leaving, both of their faces were a little blue. There was no way. I was really frightened by the cost of this arms business and my heart was pounding and I couldn't slow down. However, seeing the 2 of them about to leave, Lugger rolled his eyes and smiled at the two of them again. What are you doing? No, don't make a mistake. Lugger didn't bother to pay attention to the two people playing tricks there, and continued to ask at his own pace, hey, you two, do you want to try something good? No, don't. The two of them immediately hugged their chests to protect themselves, took a big step back, and stayed away from Lugger. When Lugger saw this posture, he felt that he couldn't get away with it anymore, so he simply pulled out two big guns from the weapon rack next to him. It was the Dakajing automatic rifle that he had planned to go to the front line for actual combat testing. A handful is more than 1 meter long, with a regular layout. A handful is less than 1 meter long and has no support structure. The former uses an 18-round magazine. The latter uses a 12-round magazine.